kick off for today's call. We're talking about achieving ambitions. Big topic. Achieving ambitions, this VP's career advice after 3 decades with the same company. And this is sponsored by Polaris. Polaris is the global leader in powersports and is a Fortune 500 company. It pioneers product breakthroughs and enriching experiences and services that have invited people to discover the joy of being outdoors since it was founded in 1954. Polaris culture thrives on passion, innovation, and a drive to think outside. And this passionate spirit is shared by our guest today, Bridget McLennan, the VP of Service, who have spent a remarkable 30 years at Polaris. We're so excited to talk to you today, Bridget, and learn a little bit more from you, hear about your journey and the advice you give for people who are thinking about career changes internally in their company and how to navigate that, how to keep their career exciting. The first question we have to ask, 30 years at Polaris, 30 years. So when are we going to see the McLennan line of utility vehicles come out? 30 years.
Well, 30 years, nearly 30 years sounds like a really long time, but it feels like yesterday. And I think the even more remarkable than that is we actually have people who have been here way longer than I have. Yeah, so it kind of goes to that Polaris family and culture and kind of that strong desire to stay committed. It very much, we have people here way longer than me. So I hate to take the spotlight away from those folks because I always look at them and go, wow, you have 20 more years in than I do. And we really do have people who have been here that long. So yeah, for me though, it's definitely a long time. And probably for a lot of the folks who are attending today, can't even imagine that, but it's flown by. It feels like yesterday.
And everybody in the audience, yes, she has that Midwestern humility that she gets, where she's deferring to people with more experience. So let's start with, tell us about yourself. What is it that you do at Polaris?
Yeah, so right now I lead our central service division, which is really built on many different things. But I would say that our ultimate goal is making sure that our dealer network, so the folks who actually sell, the retail centers who actually sell our products to our customers, are as prepared as possible to sell and service the vehicles that we make. And so anything from dealer training to the support, to the technical support that they need to service products, that all comes out of the central services team at Polaris. And so very diverse group of customers, as you can imagine. We have 1,400 dealers just in the US and Canada. So you think about how many employees each one of those entities has and how we really have to think about all different personalities, learning styles, characteristics, not just of those dealers and the dealership employees, but then ultimately those end users or those customers that they're doing business with. So a lot of thought goes into that, probably never enough, but definitely we're seeing a lot of changes in the industry. So it really has brought us to a point where we're rethinking how we make sure that we're providing those tools, systems, resources for our dealers to do their job well too.
Wow. Great. Now, was that always the plan when Bridget was a little girl and with the hair and pigtails, and they said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" You said, "I want to help with the services for a sport utility vehicle." Or what got you here?
Yeah, no, that was never the plan. And I'll be honest, I'm not young, but when I started, I probably had no clue. I actually am certain I had no clue what I wanted to do. I needed a job and Polaris had a job. I knew of Polaris, and certainly Polaris was a company, especially being from Minnesota. Polaris was a company that was kind of up here on a top shelf. It was a proud company with Minnesota roots. So I knew what that was. I knew what snowmobiles were. But honestly, it was more about finding a job at the time that I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool to work at Polaris? Wouldn't it be cool to work at a snowmobile company? And I honestly don't know to this day how I got a job here, because I was young and I did not have a lot of experience, probably no relatable experience. So I kind of thank that first person that interviewed me for taking that chance on me and saying, yeah, come on in, we'll find something for you to do. He wasn't even sure exactly what my job would be. It was kind of going to be a hodgepodge of miscellaneous things that people needed help with at peak times of the year. So very entry level, not a big commitment that this would be 30 years from now, you're going to be doing this. There was none of those discussions at that time.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. So do you find yourself, as your team is growing, as you bring in new people, do you find yourself maybe a little bit biased toward those who maybe have a little bit less experience and have that same kind of like, hey, I just want to work for a great company?
Yeah. That's a great question. I do tend to always look at the personality and kind of that spirit or that positivity or that energy. That is always the first thing that comes through as I'm talking to people, whether they're thinking about coming to Polaris or whether they're actually interviewing. And I think it has a lot to do with the Polaris culture. We're a very energetic company, kind of an exciting company. We have people who, even on our worst days, there's a lot of passion and emotion around everything that we do, even the tough stuff that isn't a lot of fun. So I think I kind of, unfortunately, I probably go or gravitate right to how much energy am I feeling from you? And are other people that you're going to work with feel that? So experience wise, sometimes you look at it and say, yeah, you don't have a lot of experience, but sometimes that's good, especially if we don't want to always have the answer right away. There are some roles where it's almost better to not have that. And then certainly it depends on the role, but experience does matter. And I tend to think of the experiences that people are bringing forth almost, well, for certain, more important than the titles that they might have on their resume. So usually people kind of do a great job of saying, I had this role at this company. And, they kind of skimp on what it really means. They don't give a long explanation, but that's the fun part when you get to talk to someone and say, translate this for me. What did you actually do? What experiences did you have? And then it starts becoming real and you can relate it to those things that you're looking for to build out your team, or maybe gaps that you have with the existing staff that you have. That's, for me at least, that's more meaningful than roles and titles and how long you were in a certain thing. It's tell me what you got out of it, what you did.
Wow, that's fantastic. To everybody who's been joining us over the last few minutes, welcome. We're talking with Bridget McLennan, the VP of Services for Polaris. We're just going through, she has 30 years of experience with this company, so we're really going to be digging in. Just a reminder, you have something you'd like to share, use the chat. You have a question you'd love to ask, use the Q&A section. And of course, we're recording. This will be shared with everyone afterwards. So let me ask you this. 30 years, 3 decades, you work in there. That's a long time. And it's one thing to say, I love the culture, I love the products and all those things. But staying with the same company for that long, that's something I think for a lot of people, it would be hard to even imagine doing nowadays. So what's really kept you there? What's made it so that every year you say, hey, let's conquer another challenge with Polaris?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that have allowed that to happen. And it will be different for everyone, right? I think the company has had a ton of growth over 30 years. So this is not the same Polaris as the day I walked in that front door. So kind of feeling all of that going on around me, it always felt like it was something new. But I also think that some of it has to do with your desire to have an ever-changing landscape around you, or always having new things happen. Some people don't like that. They want a very consistent, very constant, predictable experience when they walk into work every day. That isn't something that I would be good at or that I would enjoy. So I think, knowing that there was always going to be something new going on always kind of kept me engaged. It's almost like everybody binges, right? You're watching a show and you want to be able to say, well, okay, here's this one episode. I'm going to get to the end. I'm going to shut the TV off and I'm going to go do whatever. This is like Polaris to a T. You want to keep watching that next episode because you can't even imagine what's unfolding in the future. And then almost when you get to the end of the series, you're kind of like, oh man, things stabilized. What's the next thing that's going to happen? And Polaris is great at serving that up. And for the right people, even though, certainly we are a very stable company, there are a lot of days where it's kind of like the same thing over and over, but you can kind of pick around in other areas of the business and say, hey, what are you guys working on? Or, hey, I heard you guys are doing that. Tell me this or tell me that. And I think some of the power, and this is very relatable for other people, is you don't necessarily have to change jobs to change what your daily work might consist of. And learning about what other people are doing in other teams, I've never had anyone say no to an offer to help them. So, I mean, you could overwhelm yourself with 24/7 work by getting involved in things that either excite you or maybe you're lacking in that area and you more just want to be a part of it to learn. No one at Polaris is going to tell you to go away if you ask to help them. It's just not, we don't have these, hey, this is my job, don't worry about it, go mind your own business, watch your own bobber. That hasn't happened here in 30 years. Probably not going to happen here tomorrow either. Now, there is accountability that goes on with that, especially junior and career. Sometimes I'll be honest, I was more interested in what was going on around me than I was right in front of me. But that happens. That's okay. As long as you get your day-to-day work done really well, you're kind of gaining that credibility with whoever your manager is or your senior leader that says, yeah, I'll let Bridget go kind of poke around over in this area and learn or contribute, whatever it might be. But I know that at the end of the day, she's going to get her job done. And junior in career, that was probably what helped me move forward. Is it wasn't just saying, hey, I'm looking for the next big thing. I want to go work in international, or I want to go work on this team. I didn't really signal it that way. It was more about, I love what I'm doing. Everything is great with the job that I have, but so-and-so over here is working on this and I want to learn, or I think they should hear kind of what we do to make sure that we're not left out of this decision or this plan. And that's always kind of been allowed me to be given the opportunity to do that. And I see people on my own teams or people starting with Polaris today. Definitely, we have to have folks that are interested in what's going on around them. That's what kind of makes us great. But we also have to make sure that there's that commitment to get the daily done. And those folks, they're going to be trusted to do more and more and kind of venture out more and more outside their area.
Wow, that's incredible. So many great things. First of all, wonderful example there with the binging. I think everyone audience. How did she know? That's a great way to put that. I want to pull on a couple of strings. Before I do, everybody, we have a poll. So feel free, everyone, to participate. How long you've been at your current company? And we got some great results coming in. Wow, a lot of people have been between 5 and 10 years. That's fantastic. Good amount, less than a year. I'm in that boat. I joined Fairygodboss last July, and I'm so thankful I did. And we even have a couple. Well, look, we have a handful that have been 15 plus, 20 plus. They're coming for your crown, Bridget. They want to be. They say, I want to be on a webinar. I've been here 20 plus years.
Yeah. It is pretty impressive, though. There is a big percentage that have been there that long. Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Right.
A great mix.
Yeah. Excellent. So let's pull on a couple of things she was talking about. And this is actually, we had a question in about how you built up and were you always in service. So let's take it from this approach, because you mentioned there was definitely that feeling of there's a lot going on around me. Where can I help? Where can I learn more? This feeling of curiosity, always get your job done, but then always look for ways to add. So walk us through. If we went on your LinkedIn, we would see, sales manager and all these other titles, but to walk us through the journey of what you started doing and what were the different promotions you got that led you to one day be VP?
Yeah, I think too, looking back, a lot of moves weren't promotions, right? They might have been, lateral moves or maybe even moves that had a little bit less responsibility. But it was always with the eye of what am I gaining and what am I giving? So what do I get? It has to be a two-way street. What are you giving that new department or that new group that's trusting to hire you or bring you onto their team? But what am I going to get back? And a lot of it is you really have to focus on gaining something you don't have, maybe refining some of those skills that you know you're good at, but what am I actually going to get from it? And I think as opportunities presented themselves, it was always something I kind of looked at more of. You always go to, am I going to do well? You don't want to set yourself up to fail, but you kind of have to look and go, is it going to be a challenge? What am I actually going to be taking away from this? And how does it make me stronger? But then how does it make that team stronger? So I think that's been foundationally what prompted the moves. I didn't always stay in service. And I'll admit, I probably would have. That is where I started more on that technical side of the business, the dealer side of the business. I probably always would have done that because I am kind of a little bit of an introvert, and I really do like working with our dealers and working with the team members within that group. But I did have some very influential leaders that came to me and asked me to kind of try something new. And I would have never thought I could do that. But for example, sales, I am not a salesperson. It was very scary to me to think about trying to sell something or trying to work with salespeople. And there was a woman at Polaris. She still works here. I think she's worked here as long as I have. And she said, well, what are you afraid of? Or why wouldn't you want to consider it? And I gave all my reasons, right? I probably had 1,000 reasons. And she just started shooting them down. She's like, well, that is equatable to sales because of this, or there's something you could learn in sales, or here's the value that you could bring with the experience you have. I had never connected the dots that way. And I just thought, oh, sales, that's just not something I'm wired to do. So a lot of it is people approaching me and saying, have you ever thought about doing this? Or would you ever try this? And really kind of taking those leaps of faith. You have to have those good people around you that say, you're probably not going to get it all right, but I have your back because I think you're going to get enough right to make it worth taking you on the team. And that's another thing that Polaris is, I think, pretty strong at is there are people that are willing to take risks on people because there's enough good there that that you can build from. And so the risk is worth it. And it also helps us think about things different. I mean, I brought a whole different mindset than maybe a traditional salesperson would have. So each one of those moves in sales is probably the most extreme example, but each one of those moves or changes in direction, it kind of helped me see our business from a very different angle. A salesperson sees everything differently than a service person, for example. So now, many, many, many years later, back in the service team, I can kind of look at things from the sales point of view, the people that are boots on the ground out in the field, and also now bring in that service point of view. And I think the mix lends well to overall success.
It's fantastic. What every time you talk, there's like 1,000 things I want to pull on. You have so much great things you're sharing. I love this concept of assessing these roles as, am I going to give as much as I get? Am I going to help the team as much as they're helping me learn? That's such a great philosophy. And it sounded like what you first said wasn't always a promotion per se. Some were lateral, some might have even been a little bit of a step backwards. And when you make those moves, was there ever because it was a grand plan, like, oh, this is going to overall help my career? Or is it really just, I'm interested in joining this team and helping this team?
I probably am unique in the fact that I didn't have this grand plan. I never said, someday I want to be a VP at Polaris. Unfortunately, I probably wish I would have had that level of clarity. It was more, for me at least, about I had to like what I was doing. And I have never woke up. I mean, there's good days and bad days with everything you do, but I have never actually woke up in the morning and said, oh my gosh, I hate my job. And I just want to call in sick today. I want to play hooky. I've never had that happen. So I think for me, it was more about if I were feeling complacent or not challenged, I just knew it was time to either build myself personally, personal development, learn something new, or to kind of put the feelers out and say, what are you guys working on? Because I need something new, or hey, we've got something going on here and I want help, or I think your perspective would lend well to what we're working on. And that diversity in thought, or that desire to have that diversity in thought and be more involved and have more people involved in what I was doing, that probably happened about 15 years ago. That isn't how I started. I very much liked working on things by myself. I was an independent worker. I mean, people were great, but just hey, trust me, I got this. And I thought I was stronger to maybe just whip through stuff on my own. And sure, I would participate in teams and all of that. But as we grew, and honestly, the diversity of mainly diversity of thought of those around me, I started, experiencing people from outside industries, outside companies, all different ages, backgrounds, ethnicities. It didn't matter. And all of a sudden I started, whoa, there's way more power in many than my little old Minnesota, started at Polaris way back when. I was never going to get as far as I was going to get by bringing all those folks into anything I was doing. And same thing by learning from them. So I would say there was definitely a shift in a lot of how I went about doing that. And now, to me, sometimes you almost have to reel it back, where you say, you don't need 20 people to solve a problem. You might end up with an even bigger problem. So it's being more prescriptive about it, but definitely knowing multiple heads are going to get you further and farther faster than one or two.
What you said really resonated. Anne-Marie in the comments thanked you for your candid concept that the road doesn't have to be always up, right? That you can be looking for opportunities to help, and that gives you more. We also want to give a shout out to Joel. He started working as a contractor and then was hired, and he loves it. Never a dull day, Joel says, at Polaris. So that's good work there, Joel. Great work. For everybody who maybe just joined us, drop your comments in the chat. Drop your questions and answers in the Q&A section. We'll have some time at the end to address all of those. When you're talking at one point mentioning you're pushed a little bit, say, hey, you should try sales. Well, I'm not for X, Y, and Z reason. Sales not for me. But they said, no, you tried it. So how do you mirror that? Now that you're in that position of leadership and oversight, how do you know when to approach one of the people on your team, or maybe on somebody else's team, to say, hey, I think you should push yourself into this area, even if that's not necessarily on your roadmap?
Yeah. I think it really is kind of understanding. I think people do this all the time. You kind of work with someone and you say, so-and-so is good at this, this, and this. But yet this other person might be good at these things. I think it's really understanding what people are good at. We have a lot of people who think they're not good at things, and they really are. So as you're developing people on your teams, or getting to know different people and what their contribution is, or what their strengths are, you almost have to suggest it to some people. Sometimes you almost have to connect the dots for them. Some people don't feel comfortable. They're like, oh, if I ask to go do this or go do that, it's going to be perceived as I don't have enough work to do of my own. That's not really true. At least not at Polaris. Everybody knows that everybody has more than enough work to go around. But I think there's also this thought of helping someone else also carries the voice of our team forward. So it's not just going and assisting this other team and developing a new product or a new system or, new process. It's how do we make sure that we infuse what we know into that decision or that strategy or that business. So sometimes it's not even about, hey, I think you should go help this team, or I think you should go sit in there. You might even phrase it of, hey, you have some really good experiences, and I want to make sure that you're sharing those with that group or that person or that team. And it usually gives people, at least that might have some resistance or maybe think I'm not a salesperson, it might give them enough to go, oh, I'm not being asked to go help sales. I'm just being asked to represent service, for example. So I think you kind of have to know your audience and decide how could I best position it to give this person that confidence or that comfort level to go try something totally different.
Wow, yeah, that is so good. And you know what? She keeps saying she's not a salesperson. Don't believe it. She has that sales gene because she knows how to speak the person's language, how to put it in terms of what's valuable to them. Like you said, saying, hey, go help sales. They go, I don't want to help sales. That's not interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, you love service, right? Yeah, go represent service. Go show what it really means. And then they go, oh, let me go, right? That's
Yeah.
really, really powerful stuff. Let's take a minute, and I want to hear some stuff that you've accomplished in your 3 decades that you're especially proud of.
Yeah, there is a lot of different things. And I would say that some of the more unique situations or some of the things that have been things that I couldn't have even imagined being a part of. A great example is when we acquired Indian Motorcycle. You know, this was a separate company, owned and operated completely different from Polaris Industries, and being told, hey, we think we might want to acquire this company. Why don't you go work and learn about what's going on there and how they're operating their business, identify some strengths, weaknesses, what would it take to bring them into the Polaris family? I would say that I learned more about relationship building and trust, especially as we're talking to people who we may be buying their company and they don't know what that means to them. But then also thinking about it critically and going, this is a really strong brand company with a really strong culture. How will Polaris acquire this company and preserve all of that good without just kind of taking it over and Polarisizing it? So would we have the discipline to do what needed to be done to do that successfully? There were so many people involved on the Polaris end, and certainly at the end from the original owner operators. But I would say that really that is one of my bigger accomplishments. I didn't make the acquisition, but represented my area of the business that did that. But learning how to work through that in a very respectable, very mindful way, but also that strategic way that says it. The easy answer is, yep, buy it. Let's buy it and figure out what to do with it. But that's not really how it works. It's okay, what's the plan after? Can we really manage that plan? And how do we merge these things together with preserving the good from both? So I think that was really interesting. There's been a lot of changes. We've had a lot of international growth over the years. There was some work. This was way back in the day prior to Polaris having, subsidiary or operating offices internationally, but we had distributor partners and subsidiaries at that time. So learning some of how those businesses operated in other countries, and as we built that out, I think that was very interesting. I had zero international experience at that time. I hadn't even traveled internationally. So learning about how to interact with different cultures, different time zones, different agendas, I think that helped me grow. There's just so many things. I mean, some of the accomplishments are tiny, right? It might be, we had a really big business problem, and I won't mention what it was because they happen all the time and they'll happen tomorrow, but very big, where everybody kind of looks at each other in the room and goes, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And you just kind of rally together and you figure out, okay, here's what we know from last time, or here's what we learned before, here's what we know we have to make sure works today, and how are we going to make that happen? Some of those actually, the little ones, which didn't seem little at the time, but in the grand scheme of things, those were almost the most rewarding, because you do just kind of grassroots, get together, bang it out, and figure out how to make it work. And those, honestly, everybody will encounter those. If you're not encountering those, I want to know what company that is, because there can't be a lot going on there. So don't forget to celebrate those smaller wins or those smaller problems, because I think the things that you learn are almost more valuable than some of those bigger strategic things.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm gonna prompt you with one thing. I want to hear your feelings on. Tell us about STEP.
The STEP program?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. That's a zinger. I didn't know you were going to ask anything about that. The service technician education program is really founded on a few principles. One is we know that our technicians are a scarce resource everywhere. I mean, any part of this country or anything anyone reads, people that are working in trades are very hard to come by. Our dealers and our customers survive on technicians. We can do a great job building, designing products, getting them sold through. But if we don't have the boots on the ground, those people that can actually fix them or service them or maintain them for the owners, we kind of fall apart. We have just this big sea, big land of vehicles that can't get an oil change. That's not going to help any of us. So what Polaris did is we had partnerships with many technical colleges where we provide them with our training curriculum, with Polaris vehicles, some of our tools, and really help them keep their power sports small engine program running. We also have dealers that are positioned around those areas. So what STEP is really kind of taking that to the next level. We partnered with the state of Minnesota. They are, and one of our local tech colleges, Central Lakes College, and a Polaris dealer, and said, look, if we were going to think about this for the future, and we were going to have a sustainable program that made the power sports industry, the technician role, a meaningful career path, what would we need to do? And how would we go about doing that? Well, it starts with needing to recruit students. But those students have to they have to see that as an exciting path. And that's where the state of Minnesota kind of comes in, because they say the mobility space is huge. We have radically changing vehicle technology. We know there's a shortage of people willing or able or interested in working on the products. And that's really important to Polaris because this is a big part of our culture. And we also have small businesses or those Polaris dealers who rely on this aspect of their business to succeed. So they gave us a grant, or gave the school a grant that said, go ahead and try to figure out how to make this work. And so we partnered with that dealer, and they developed kind of an apprenticeship program that said, as students are going through Central Lakes College, the dealership will allow them to work at their dealership and learn. So kind of a hands-on learning experience. The college was able to get their curriculum modified so that those students are actually earning credit while they're turning a wrench. So it's a paid internship, but it's almost like double dipping. They're getting paid by the dealer and they're getting credits earned in school for their certification program. What will happen with this is those students now have a really strong attachment to that dealer. They're already familiar with the dealer. The dealer already knows, hey, Joshua's great, Bridget, she needs a little work. They're already started kind of able to assess the class. Those students hopefully will come out of there. The ones who have earned the right will receive an offer for a permanent position. The school wins because job placement is one of the ways that they can recruit students. If they go out and say, we have this great program, but we got about a 20% placement rate, everybody's going to kind of look at each other and go, well, I'm not going to, invest my time in that degree if I can't find a job. So it's a really good win-win for everyone. How Polaris wins there is certainly by increasing the number of technicians that we place in dealerships, but preserving those power sports programs. If they don't have students, they're not going to keep that program going. And if there isn't a program, we're not going to have people who can go into those technician roles at dealerships. So
That's a wonderful program. I think, to show that commitment really says a lot about the culture of Polaris.
Yeah.
Not only education, their commitment to their dealerships, their commitment to that service. That's really, really a wonderful, really shows you the kind of company you're working for. Hey, everyone, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A here in a few minutes here. We're going to get to some of the questions that are asked here in the Q&A. Of course, you have a comment, some thought you'd like to share, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Before we get to those questions, though, I'd like to ask you something. I think for a lot of people, when they think of something like power sports, it's something that they could traditionally associate with men, with the male-dominated industries, things like that. So we know you're not purely defined by your identity as a woman. But let's talk about your identity as a woman here for a minute. And what has been your experience as a woman in the power sports field?
Yeah, I would say that experiences today are very different than they were 30 years ago. So I tend to not think too much about that because it's not even the same culture, the same company, the same interactions. I do believe that Polaris looks at people in a way that what is the value that you bring? I don't know if the stigma is as great as it maybe once was, of, well, you're a girl, you can't do this, or you're a woman, you're not going to be perceived as strong or assertive, or, you probably can't, our dealers won't respect you or give you credibility. I don't see that. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean it's gone. It doesn't mean that there aren't some differences. But I also think that there is some level of being able to operate in the sense that you have to be confident as in what you know and what you're delivering. And if nothing else, no matter what someone's feeling is on me being a woman or what my background or my experience is, the one common across every person I have dealt with, whether it's dealer, customer, coworker, peer, doesn't matter, is people like you when you get your job done. So if you follow through, and it's okay to say you don't know, people almost like that sometimes more than you acting like you have all the answers.
Yeah.
If you follow through, they don't really care who you are, where you came from, what you look like. They don't really care. It does take some time to build that credibility. And there are people that can kind of stonewall you right away. I don't want to talk to you, go get him or whatever. It will happen. Move on, because there are plenty of more people who will gladly take your help and be appreciative of it. So I think some of it is I don't want to bury my head in the sand and say it doesn't exist, but I do think that there are different ways to overcome it. And I don't think that Polaris has a culture where that's going to be such an extreme barrier that you're not going to feel like you're able to accomplish your goals.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, I know that that's what so many of the members of our community are looking for, are companies that, kind of exactly what you said, which is, hey, if you can get the job done, that's what we care about. Your gender or racial or any other identity that might help to define you is not going to define whether you're successful here or not,
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. We have Lori is a career services director at a small college in central Kansas. She's loved what this has been about. She can't wait to share with the students. I think you might get a call from her saying, can you expand your program to Kansas? Kansas is down, so 2 states down, 3 states down.
Yeah, Midwest. Yeah.
Before you know it, you'll have those programs all up and down the middle of the country,
Hey, that's the goal, right? We gotta pilot it first. We gotta make sure it works. We gotta make sure everything comes through the way we expect. But the ultimate goal is that we do scale it out, right? It won't be helpful if we just have a great pile of technicians here in Minnesota and don't have anything else going on around us. But yeah, that's awesome to hear. Good.
Yes. And Nicole Kelly says, I love this topic. I'm all for women getting involved in male-dominated fields. That's wonderful, Nicole. Yeah, we love it too, especially as you were saying, when it can get to that point where it doesn't have to be the topic du jour, that we can recognize that there's issues to be addressed, but also we know that we can focus on doing our job and being judged by the success we have,
Yeah. I'll share this story because I think about this a lot in different things that I encounter throughout my career here. This was a very, very long time ago. I want to say it was probably 95, 96. I had a boss. He was very talented. He was good. He doesn't work here anymore, long gone. So we don't have to worry about if there's any Polaris stigma on, oh, you're ratting out so-and-so. But I mean, you guys know, I was pretty transparent. I didn't know a lot when I started. I didn't have that niche that said, Polaris can use me in this way. And this is where my strength is. My strength probably was more in my attitude and my ability to do anything than it was, here's what you're really good at. And so when I started reporting to this person, they were in a technical capacity. It was a fix the product capacity, work with our dealers and help them. I didn't know, certainly didn't know as much as the other folks on that team that were doing that. But I was willing to learn, and I was willing to call dealers back and admit when I didn't know and agree to chase down the answer. And they loved it, right? Because sometimes they didn't care. They were just like, yeah, somebody call me back, somebody get me the answer, we're good. But this boss would kind of take time to almost call attention to how much I didn't know instead of call attention to how much I did know. And again, a long time ago, this would never play out this way today, but the lesson I learned will resonate for the rest of my life. I was leaving work. He had kind of called me out in front of some of my peers. And I was like, man, one of those days, right? Where you're like, this is not good. I was mad. I was mad as hell. And I thought I can either go in there yelling and screaming, or I can go in there and kind of politely lay it out. And basically I said, you can either continue to degrade me for what I don't know, because that's what he had been doing. And it doesn't make either one of us look very good. Or you could kind of teach me what you do know and then brag about the fact that you taught me everything I know. And it took a while because I had to read him, and he liked to brag about everything that he did. And so I thought, how am I going to position this? And he just kind of looked at me and didn't say anything and looked back down. And I kind of went running out the door, and I'm shaking. I get in my car and I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to have a job tomorrow. And it was kind of interesting. He didn't talk to me for a few days when I came back. And then all of a sudden it was kind of like, hey, I'm going to be working on this. You want to come watch? Or, hey, he didn't sound like that, but in my head at the time, he was like, hey. And it really flipped that switch. Now it could have gone either way. Luckily for me, it went okay, and he took it okay. But think about that, whether you're working with people or whether it's happening to you. Talk to the person. Say, look, this is what I'm feeling. It's making us both look bad. We're both going to be better off if we work together. Show me what you know, or tell me that I'm clueless. Just lay it out there so that we can get over this, because it's not going to go well if we keep spending every day just barking about what I don't do well. Yeah.
Wow, what an incredible story. What an incredible experience. I love the way you approach it. I told you, audience, I know she's saying, well, I'm not in sales, but she has that sales bug. She knows how to talk to people in their language. That's incredible. That's an incredible story. Let's so audience, I know you've been putting in all these questions. Let's address the audience questions for a little while, and then we'll leave a few minutes at the end to kind of sum it all up with kind of like, what advice would you give type thing, you know what I mean? So here's a question from the audience. Were you invited to be considered as a leader? And if so, who kind of coached you up to say it's time to be a leader? Specifically, were it male mentors, female mentors?
It probably equal parts of both. I go back to that first person who hired me, where I said, I can't believe he hired me. He was very, very patient. And I think he probably saw more in me than I would have. I didn't have an intention of staying here forever. I was going to go back to college. I was trying to just kind of do the normal thing that a kid did back then. And I think he kept probably trusting me more than he should have. And, so along the way, I don't know that any one person said, hey, I think you're a future leader at Polaris. But I think that as new opportunities came up, Polaris does a great job of looking across the company and, again, looking more at strengths. I may not have something that directly benefits that role today, but I might have experiences from prior roles that are going to make the transition or bring some value there. So, I don't know how Polaris positioned it on, here's where Bridget's going to go, but certainly I think I always made my interest in service known. I had kind of come in and out of service multiple times over the past, for forever, and really felt strongly that I could add value to how we do business with our dealers. So for me, at least, that's probably a strength that I had, that Polaris said, okay, if we want to do anything with her, how would we put her in a position where she is working with or helping dealers? And different opportunities come up. I mean, like I said before, it's not always that next rung on the ladder. Sometimes it's new businesses that we're trying to kind of incubate or bring to life. Sometimes there were big, hairy problems that, hey, we got to fix this. How can we do it? So I think it was more just being very self-aware about the fact that I would have more joy working through or with dealers than, maybe in engineering, for example, where there's maybe a more of a disconnect there. So, and I always made that known. So I think the fact that Polaris, okay, she has a lot of experience doing it. She probably does it pretty well. Dealers seem to like her. She's not ticking anybody off today. And that's what she wants to do. How do we best use that? So I don't know if there was any sort of, maybe somebody had a grand plan somewhere, but I sure as heck didn't know about it. It was more about, and I think too, trust in the process. I've met a lot of people, and I've done it myself. You kind of lose patience where you say, hey, I've been doing the same thing for a long time. Why aren't I getting promoted? Or am I going to be looked at, poorly if I don't keep trying to go after that next big thing? You can talk about how you want to do that, and you can share that information with whether it's human resources or your leader or peers. That's almost more powerful than putting it on paper and saying, I want the next level of responsibility every 2 years, or I'm not going to be happy. I don't know of a company where that's going to actually work out perfectly that way. And I think thinking about it that way is only going to lead you to failure. Life doesn't work that way. And if you just take that next job because it's the next step up, what kind of job is it going to be? Because there's probably always going to be that job that's the next step up, but it might not be the best job for you. And all of a sudden you're miserable there, and you might not do well there. And your the feelings you have about it, they're going to show through in what you're doing. And people are kind of going to go, well, she's not that great. So think about it. It has to still tie back to what you want to do and what's going to bring you joy and what you're good at. Don't just take the title.
I know there's a lot of people listening that are going through what I'm going through right now. They're feeling their temperature rises a little bit internally because they're hearing you talk and they're starting to, you're looking at my career, they're looking at their career, and you're going, yeah, how am I making these decisions? How am I evaluating these opportunities? That was so insightful. Thank you so much for that. It's along those lines, a little bit more, as you develop potential leaders as part of your direct report line, as you recognize people who, hey, this might be the right opportunity for you. How do you mentor them? How do you guide them and help them out?
Yeah, that's something that always, I think, can be improved on. You really have to be in tune and open to know what people are strong at and what they want. And sometimes there is this false assumption of, this person wants the next best thing, or this person wants to stay in this job forever. You have to make sure you know what their thinking is. There are situations where people might pause because of stuff going on in personal life. Maybe they're chasing their MBA. Maybe they, just had a set of twins. Maybe there's 8 million things going on. And you really have to make sure you're aligned with where are you at right now and what do you want to do? Do you love what you're doing and just kind of want to have more or a little different? Or do you really want to try something outside? It's not fair for a leader to assume and it's not fair to the employee to not let you know. So I think there's that two-way street of where are we at and how can we best help both of it, each other, not just I'm going to help you progress your career. There has to be that personal development and even kind of at least directionally what you might want to do.
That is fantastic. Let me ask you one more. We have so many great questions from the audience. But one more that I think really stands out. So look, we all sometimes miss the mark. We fall short of the goal. We didn't deliver the project on time, or it didn't work quite the way we thought it was going to work. So what do you do in cases like that? How do you, as this person put, how do you recover your credibility?
Yeah. Well, if there was no one from Polaris on this call, I'd feel more comfortable, and I'm going to say it. I probably screw up more than I do well, right? But I think there's two things that have to happen there. You have to own it and you have to figure it out. So I think, and that's another good thing about Polaris is they don't expect it. They know that perfection is not going to happen every time. They know that 100% isn't going to happen every time. It's what we're all going to want, and it's what we're held accountable for. The standard is high, but we also have to give people that feeling that they can admit when things aren't going right, or they can kind of say, yeah, I made the wrong call here, or I went the wrong direction. Now, I will say, what will set you apart from that person who screws up all the time, where you keep going to your manager, you keep going to leaders and going, yeah, I missed that one. I forgot about this, forgot about that. You better have a plan to fix it when you admit that failure. If you go in without a plan, you might as well walk out at the end of the day and not come back. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a perfect plan, because you wouldn't have missed the mark if you had the perfect plan. But you have to say, this is what I know so far. This is what I think we need to do. Gut check this with me and ask. You need to ask for that direction, especially if you kind of realize that what you thought was going to happen isn't happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's so, I say to my sales team, we're never afraid of what might happen. We're just prepared for it. You know, it's going to happen. We're going to fall short. And when that happens, what are we going to do next?
Yeah.
Right? Sitting around crying about it or trying to hide it. I mean, I used to work construction work. So I learned that lesson very early. Like when something wasn't level, stop what you were doing and call the foreman over and say, okay, I didn't lay that level. We got to take it down. Don't let someone catch it, you know? This has been, so for everybody, I know you have so many more questions and we wish we had so much more time, but you know, she is a VP, so she's got a lot of work she's got to do. So if you have questions, reach out to her on LinkedIn, say, hey, I was listening. I just wanted to follow up with you. We have Dawn who works for Polaris with the Indian Motorcycle Company. Dawn, connect with her. She can answer some of those questions that you had in the chat. But let's sum up in two things. One, I'm going to ask you the hardest hitting question. What is your favorite Polaris vehicle?
Oh my gosh, there's way too many, but I'm going to go old school here because it was kind of a breakthrough technology. But on the snowmobile side, that our 440 trail, the liquid, there's not a snowmobile. I mean, I know our technology is light years beyond that right now, but for the time, that was pretty cool. I think when we launched the Razor line, that was kind of a radical change in that side-by-side category. So I think, and we've taken that just beyond probably what anyone could have expected at Polaris. So anything Razor, you know what, every single one of our product lines, I have a favorite on. So I can probably take up the next half hour just talking about that, but a lot of legacy products to be proud of. And then certainly some of the stuff that we've just come out with in some of the ways that we're bringing technology and features, you know, our new electric Ranger. I think that's really going to hit a niche. I'm really excited to have one of those. I think it fits for my use cases really well. So I'm pretty excited to see what type of customers we end up selling those vehicles to and how we build from there. So like I said, I could keep talking forever. And I know you gave me two questions and there's only a few minutes. So I'll let you move on there.
That's great though. We love the passion. I'm sure there's so many people who I mean, I know I'm already, you know, my boss is gonna say, what did you say about, I'm already thinking about joining Polaris. If that's such a wonderful place to work, that sounds fantastic. Being outside, you know, I don't know that I don't have necessarily outside clothes on right now, but you know, I don't know, you go snowmobiling in a suit, but maybe, you never know, right? So last question here, and it's really less of a question, it's more of I'm gonna ask for a statement from you. All this being said, this journey that you've been on, the way you've assessed what opportunities are right for you, the way you've shifted through your career and ultimately got to where you're going. As the people today who have come and listened to you, as they walk away, what is it that you more than anything else want them to take away from today?
Wow, Joshua, that's a big question. I would say everybody has a different perspective and there are different ways to go about your career. Don't assume that what works for one person would work for you. But I do think you need to decide how you want to approach it and you need to think about it with an open mind. You can read a million books on the matter. You can talk to a million peers. You can go research on LinkedIn. But what happened with me might not work with someone else. I think it's really about, for me at least, what do you like doing? And I don't know if it matters the industry, but what do you like doing? And find jobs that in all different levels that would capitalize and let you do those things you like to do. I don't know. I just think it helps. Like if you like project management, there are a zillion jobs out there that where project management skills, you're going to contribute. It doesn't have to be a project manager role. Think about what you have, the skill you have, and don't go look for the matching title. Just say, how does that benefit all these different areas of companies? And if that's something I know I like, it brings me joy, make sure that that's at least a part of that next job you're looking for.
Very, very well said. And to the audience, Polaris is a leader in the power sports world. And as we can hear, it's a culture of learning, of opportunity, of education. And then if you go to fairygodboss.com and you look at Polaris, there are a lot of open roles that you might want to apply for. And before you know, you might be working right here on Bridget's team. Thank you so much for your time. This was really a powerful discussion. We had a lot of really great feedback from the audience, a lot of great questions. We really appreciated you speaking with us today, Bridget.
Thank you guys. Thanks for listening for an hour straight of us ramble on. That's awesome. Thank you.
I can't believe it's been an hour. I feel like
I know. Yeah.
Hey, audience, you send in all your requests to Fairygodboss and say, hey, we want a part 2. And if we get another request, maybe we can convince Bridget for a part 2, all right?